The breaking point. The terraformed plains of New Haven stretched toward the horizon, golden wheat fields swaying beneath twin moons. 7 years of hard work had transformed this once barren planet into humanity's most promising colony, home to nearly 12,000 settlers. Scientists, farmers, engineers, and their families had built something precious here, a future free from Earth's overcrowded cities and depleted resources. Ilara Chen stood on the observation deck of Agricultural Station 7, watching her 10-year-old daughter Maya chase synthetic butterflies through the test fields. The girl's laughter carried on the artificial breeze, a sound that still felt miraculous on a world that had been lifeless just a decade ago. Ilara's communication band vibrated against her wrist. It was her husband, Marcus. "The atmospheric regulators are finally calibrated," his holographic face announced, grinning with pride. "We might actually get real rain next cycle instead of the mist. The kids will go crazy. Maya will probably stand outside for hours." Ilara smiled. "Any word from Central about thee?" The transmission cut abruptly as the lights flickered. Then came the first tremor, subtle, almost imperceptible. Ilara's gaze shot upward. The protective atmospheric shield that surrounded New Haven's main settlement wavered, its blue luminescence pulsing erratically. "What the hell?" she whispered, squinting at several dark shapes piercing the upper atmosphere. "Not meteorites. Too precise. Too controlled." Her scientific mind processed the information even as her instincts screamed danger. Vessels. Unidentified. Descending rapidly. The emergency alert system remained silent. No warnings, no evacuation notices. New Haven had no military presence. The colony was registered under the Galactic Accord as a scientific and agricultural settlement. Protection was supposed to be guaranteed. The comms system crackled. "This is Administrator Joshi. We have unidentified vessels entering our atmosphere. Please remain." Static consumed the rest. The first blast hit the central communication tower, vaporizing it instantly. The second struck the power grid. Darkness swept across the settlement as the protective shield collapsed completely. 3 more explosions followed in rapid succession. The colony's hospital, the main habitat dome, the water purification plant. This wasn't an accident. This was methodical. "Maya!" Ilara screamed, sprinting toward her daughter. The girl stood frozen in the field, eyes wide with terror as massive shadows fell across the landscape. When the alien ships fully emerged from the clouds, they defied everything humanity knew about extraterrestrial civilizations. Angular and obsidian, they resembled massive insects carved from volcanic glass, their hulls absorbing rather than reflecting light. No markings, no visible propulsion systems, just geometric perfection and overwhelming presence. They had never seen this species before. First contact was happening through fire and destruction. As Ilara reached Maya, a blinding white beam cut through the agricultural dome's reinforced polymer ceiling. The air itself seemed to burn. Plants withered instantly. The synthetic butterflies dissolved into ash. "Run!" Ilara gasped, scooping Maya into her arms and sprinting toward the emergency evacuation tunnels. Behind them, the observation deck exploded, raining debris and flames. Across New Haven, the pattern repeated. Precise strikes eliminating infrastructure, communication capabilities, defensive measures, and escape routes. The few security personnel the colony maintained fell quickly, their standard-issue weapons proving useless against the invaders' shields. When the ground troops emerged from the alien vessels, they moved with clinical efficiency. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, their forms were vaguely humanoid but wrong. Too many joints, limbs that bent at unnatural angles, and featureless helmets that reflected their victims' terrified faces back at them. They didn't speak. They didn't make demands. They simply executed. Marcus Chen died trying to save 3 children trapped in a collapsed habitat section. His last act was to activate the manual override on an emergency shelter, sealing the children inside while the aliens' weapons reduced him to atoms. By nightfall, New Haven had become a graveyard of broken dreams and smoldering ruins. The attackers had been thorough, systematically destroying everything human hands had built. Yet they hadn't been perfect. Deep beneath the colony's main settlement, in a bunker designed to withstand natural disasters, 16 survivors huddled in darkness. Among them, clutching her traumatized daughter, Ilara Chen worked feverishly to repair a quantum transmitter, New Haven's last functional communication device. "Why are they doing this?" whispered an elderly botanist, his hands trembling uncontrollably. "We have nothing they could want. This planet barely supported life before we came." "They didn't come for resources," Ilara replied, voice hollow as she soldered a broken connection. "They came to make a statement." The aliens had already departed, leaving behind only destruction and death. Their message was clear: humanity's expansion would not be tolerated. After 3 hours of desperate work, the transmitter sputtered to life. Ilara's fingers flew across the controls, bypassing standard protocols to access Earth's emergency defense channel, a frequency she'd never imagined needing to use. "This is Dr. Ilara Chen, Chief Xenobiologist, New Haven Colony," she spoke, fighting to keep her voice steady. We were 12,000. Now we are 16. Unknown hostiles. Unprovoked attack. Complete destruction." She paused, glancing at her daughter's vacant stare. "They showed no mercy. Send help. Send." Her voice broke, then hardened. "Send everything." The transmission launch, racing across vast distances through quantum space. Hours passed in tense silence as the survivors waited, conserving oxygen and watching their meager supplies dwindle. When the transmitter finally crackled with a response, the voice that emerged belonged to Admiral Helena Vasquez, commander of Earth's Defense Force. "New Haven survivors, we have received your transmission. Rescue vessels are en route." A pause. "Evidence-gathering protocols are primary. Secure any data on the attackers." Ilara leaned closer to the transmitter. "Admiral, you don't understand. These weren't pirates or raiders. This was extermination. Deliberate, methodical." "We understand perfectly, Dr. Chen." Admiral Vasquez replied, her tone shifting subtly. "Earth has received 3 identical distress calls in the past 14 hours. New Haven, Proxima Colony, Ganymede Station, all reporting the same attackers, same tactics." Ilara's blood ran cold. 3 colonies. 3 confirmed. 7 others have gone silent. The bunker fell utterly quiet as the implications sank in. This hadn't been an isolated incident. This was coordinated. A declaration. "The Security Council has convened." Admiral Vasquez continued. "Article 7 has been invoked." Ilara gasped. Article 7. The authorization for full military response, unrestricted by the limitations of the Galactic Accord. Not used since the Mars Rebellion 30 years ago. "Help is coming, Dr. Chen," the Admiral said. "But so is something else. Document everything. Earth needs to know exactly who we're dealing with." The transmission ended, leaving the survivors in stunned silence. Outside their bunker, the ruins of New Haven smoldered under alien stars. But across the void of space, something was awakening. Something the attackers could not have anticipated. On Earth, in the subterranean command center beneath the Urals, Admiral Helena Vasquez stood before the assembled Joint Chiefs and Security Council representatives. The holographic displays surrounding them showed the devastation across multiple colonies, scenes of systematic destruction that had left over 100,000 colonists dead. "They attacked without warning," she stated, her weathered face grim in the blue light of the displays. "No demands, no communication attempts. They hit our most vulnerable outposts first, scientific stations, agricultural colonies, places with minimal defenses and high civilian populations." General Ibrahim Okafor, head of terrestrial forces, studied the projection of the alien ship designs. "Do we have identification?" "Negative. Vasquez replied. "They match no known species in the Galactic Registry. Whoever they are, they've been hiding their existence from the galactic community." The Secretary General leaned forward. "The Accord prohibits military action without attempted diplomatic contact. The Accord also guarantees protection for registered non-military settlements," Vasquez countered. 10 colonies, 117,000 civilians. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a statement. Silence fell across the chamber as security footage from Ganymede Station played. The mechanical precision with which the aliens eliminated human presence, the deliberate targeting of children in medical facilities. "They believe we're weak," Vasquez continued. "They believe we've forgotten how to fight. That decades of peace have dulled our edges." General Okafor nodded slowly. "They're about to learn otherwise." Within hours, Executive Order 731 was signed, activating protocols that had laid dormant for nearly 30 years. Massive ship hangars concealed beneath Earth's oceans opened for the first time since their construction. Military personnel were recalled from civilian positions. Production facilities across Luna and Mars shifted to wartime manufacturing. The response would not be proportional. It would be absolute. In her quarters aboard the EDF flagship Nemesis, Admiral Vasquez reviewed the combat readiness reports. The fleet had been maintaining the appearance of minimal military capacity for decades, a political decision to alleviate concerns from other species about humanity's expansion. But beneath that facade, humanity had been preparing, not out of aggression, but out of the hard-earned wisdom that peace was never guaranteed. She opened a secure channel to all fleet commanders. "The Galactic Council has been notified of our response under Article 7. We expect political opposition, but no military interference. Our targets are clear. We will locate the species responsible for these attacks, and we will demonstrate the cost of targeting human civilians." The assembled officers nodded grimly. They had all seen the footage, had all processed the brutality of the attacks. "This is not revenge," Vasquez concluded, though the fire in her eyes suggested otherwise. "This is correction. They fundamentally misunderstood what humanity is capable of. Our task is to educate them." As the briefing ended, Vasquez stood at the observation window, watching Earth's fleet assemble against the backdrop of stars. 117 vessels, destroyers, carriers, and assault ships, each carrying the most advanced weapons humanity had developed during its long peace. Weapons created not with the hope of use, but with the understanding that the universe was vast and not always kind. The attackers had sought to extinguish humanity's expansion with fear. They would learn that fear was a poor weapon to use against a species that had survived its own violent history. "Set course for the Vega sector," Admiral Vasquez commanded. "Maximum burn. We end this now." Retribution's edge. The Carex outpost hung in the void like a jagged obsidian fist, the first major military installation of the species that had yet to identify themselves to humanity. Angular and imposing, it orbited a nondescript moon in a system far from established trade routes. Hidden, secure, untouchable. Until now. Commander Rojan Mez stood on the outpost's observation deck, his 4 eyes scanning the sensor readouts with growing concern. Something was wrong with the deep space monitoring network. 6 relay stations had gone silent in the past rotation, creating a blind spot that stretched across 3 sectors. "Technical malfunction?" he inquired, mandibles clicking impatiently. His subordinate, a junior technician, trembled slightly. "Unlikely, Commander. The pattern of failures suggests deliberate targeting." "Impossible," Rojan dismissed. "The primitive species in this sector lack the capability to detect our stealth technology, let alone disable it." The words had barely left his mouth when the outpost's proximity alarms shrieked to life. The void beyond the reinforced viewports suddenly filled with ships materializing from quantum space, ships unlike any the Carex had encountered before. Sleek, angular vessels with minimal ornamentation and visible weapons arrays that pulsed with energy. Most disturbing was their formation, not the chaotic arrangement of traders or the rigid patterns of the Galactic Council patrols, but the precise, predatory positioning of experienced military minds. "Identify them," Rojan commanded, fighting to maintain composure. The technician's hands flew across the control surface. Scanning signatures match. Earth vessels. Earth. Rojan's inner eyelids flickered in confusion. The bipeds from the outer rim. Impossible. They're agricultural colonists. Pre-FTL barbarians with a transmission cut through all communication channels, bypassing security protocols with shocking ease. A human female appeared on the main display, her dark eyes hard as volcanic glass. "This is Admiral Helena Vasquez of the Earth Defense Force. We know what you did at New Haven, at Proxima, at Ganymede and 7 other human settlements." Her voice carried no emotion, just cold certainty. "We're here to respond." Rojan's blood ran cold. The primitive species wasn't supposed to have this capability, this military presence. The intelligence reports had been clear. Humans maintained token defensive forces only, having embraced pacifism decades ago. Before he could respond, the first human vessel opened fire. Not warning shots, not disabling strikes aimed at weapon systems or engines. They targeted the outpost's command center with surgical precision. The explosion threw Rojan across the deck as emergency containment fields struggled to compensate for the sudden decompression. Through the confusion and screaming alarms, one thought crystallized in his mind. They knew exactly where to hit us. Across the Kerex outpost, the pattern repeated. Human vessels didn't waste energy on broad attacks. Each strike targeted critical systems, communication arrays, shield generators, weapon emplacements, with a level of intelligence that suggested intimate knowledge of Kerex military architecture. "Launch all defense squadrons," Rojan ordered, dragging himself to a secondary command console as fires erupted around him. The outpost's fighter bays discharged swarms of Kerex interceptors, the pride of their military, capable of outmaneuvering any known species vessels. They moved with practiced precision, executing perfect attack formations against the human ships. It wasn't enough. Human fighters emerged from their carriers, smaller than the Kerex vessels, but moving with impossible agility. While Kerex pilots rely on mathematical precision and programmed attack patterns, the humans flew with intuitive unpredictability, making choices that defied tactical logic yet consistently succeeded. Within 20 minutes, the space around the outpost was littered with the debris of Kerex fighters. The human vessels had taken losses, but far fewer than any military simulation would have predicted. "How?" Rojan whispered, watching the destruction unfold. "How did they advance so quickly?" The answer came from his intelligence officer, speaking through a blood-soaked breathing mask. "They didn't advance, Commander. They concealed." Understanding dawned with horrifying clarity. The humans hadn't been pacifists. They had been patient. While presenting a face of minimal military capacity to the galaxy, they had been developing, training, preparing, not for conquest, but for exactly this scenario. On the command deck of the Nemesis, Admiral Vasquez watched the battle unfold with cold satisfaction. The intelligence gathered from the New Haven survivors had proven invaluable. Dr. Chen's xenobiological analysis had identified crucial weaknesses in the aliens' physiology and, by extension, their military thinking. "Their ships are clustering for mutual shield reinforcement," reported her tactical officer. "Standard Kerex doctrine, according to the data we extracted from their downed vessel at Proxima." Vasquez nodded. "Predictable. Deploy the Thanatos protocol." Across the human fleet, specialized EMP weapons powered up, designed specifically to exploit the unique energy signatures of Kerex shield technology. When they fired, the results were immediate. The overlapping shield bubbles didn't just fail. They collapsed inward, creating feedback loops that disabled the Kerex vessels from within. "We're receiving surrender signals from multiple Kerex ships," the communications officer announced. Ignore them, Vasquez replied. Proceed to Phase 2. Marine dropships launched from the human carriers, streaking toward the crippled outpost. Unlike the Carracks, who had slaughtered defenseless civilians, the human Marines had clear objectives: secure intelligence data, capture high-ranking officers, and establish humanity's capacity for precise military action. Commander Rojan watched in disbelief as human soldiers breached the outpost's main docking bay. They moved differently than any military force he had studied, not with the regimented uniformity of the Galactic Council's peacekeepers, but with fluid adaptability, each soldier seeming to operate both independently and as part of a seamless whole. They're heading for the Central Data Core, his security chief reported. How do they know the layout of our station? Rojan had no answer. The humans shouldn't have had access to Carrack's architectural designs. They shouldn't have known about the secondary shield harmonics. They shouldn't have been able to bypass the quantum-encrypted communications. Unless a horrifying possibility formed in his mind. What if the colonies hadn't been targeted for extermination? What if they had been bait? The door to the emergency command center buckled under concentrated weapons fire. When it finally gave way, human soldiers poured in. Their armor less ornate than Carrack's battle suits, but evidently more functional. At their center stood a woman whose bearing marked her as a leader despite the identical armor. Commander Rojan Mez, she stated, not a question but a confirmation. How do you know my name? Rojan demanded. The human removed her helmet, revealing sharp features and eyes that contained not hatred, but something more terrifying: absolute certainty. Colonel Amara Chen, she introduced herself. Daughter of Marcus and Ilara Chen of New Haven Colony. The name struck Rojan like a physical blow. One of the settlements the Supreme Command had ordered destroyed as a demonstration of Carrack's superiority. A primitive outpost that should have had no means of calling for help, let alone triggering this level of response. Impossible, he whispered. The cleansing operation left no survivors. Colonel Chen's expression didn't change. 16 survived, including my mother, long enough to tell us everything we needed to know about your ships, your weapons, your tactics. Across Carrack space, similar scenes were unfolding. Earth's fleet had split into precision strike teams, hitting 5 major Carrack's installations simultaneously. Not random targets, but facilities specifically chosen to cripple the Carrack's military infrastructure while minimizing civilian casualties. On Carrack's Prime, the ruling hierarchs convened an emergency session as reports of the devastating counterattack filtered in. Supreme Commander Vostok, architect of the demonstration strikes against human colonies, found himself facing questions he couldn't answer. You assured us the humans were primitive. High Hierarch Tella thundered. You claimed they had abandoned military development in favor of scientific pursuits. The intelligence was sound, Vostok insisted, though doubt had begun to gnaw at him. Their registered vessels showed minimal weapons. Their colonies had no defenses. All indicators suggested a species that had chosen expansion over military readiness. Yet here they are, another hierarch observed coldly, executing military operations with precision that suggests decades of preparation. The truth was becoming unavoidable. The Carracks, believing themselves the superior species, had fundamentally misunderstood humanity. They had seen the humans focus on scientific and cultural development as evidence of weakness, not recognizing it as the luxury of a species that had already mastered warfare. We must mobilize the full Carrack's battle fleet, Vostok urged. Crush this human response before they advance further. High Hierarch Tella's 4 eyes narrowed. And if they have anticipated this as well, if this is precisely what they want us to do. Before Vostok could respond, the chamber's secure communication terminal activated. The face that appeared on the display belonged to Admiral Vasquez. Hierarchs of the Carrack's Dominion, she began without preamble. By now you understand that you have made a catastrophic miscalculation. Vostok moved to terminate the transmission, but Tella stopped him with a raised hand. Speak, human. You believed us weak, because we chose not to brandish our weapons at every opportunity. Vasquez continued. You mistook restraint for inability, peace for vulnerability. The Admiral's image was replaced by footage from the human colonies, the systematic destruction, the targeting of civilians, the methodical cruelty. Then it shifted to current feeds, showing the smoldering remains of Carrick's military outposts, the captured vessels, the precision of the human counterattack. We could continue, Vasquez stated as her image returned. We have the locations of 17 more Carrick's military installations. We have the capability to strike your homeworld directly. We have everything we need to erase your species from the galaxy. The chamber fell silent as the implications settled over the hierarchs. This wasn't bravado. The humans had demonstrated both the military capacity and the tactical intelligence to follow through on the threat. But unlike you, Vasquez continued, we did not come to exterminate. We came to establish understanding. A data packet accompanied the transmission, coordinates for a neutral location, terms for a formal cessation of hostilities, and requirements for reparations to the devastated human colonies. You have 6 hours to respond, the Admiral concluded. Choose carefully. As the transmission ended, the hierarchs exchanged glances filled with new understanding. The humans hadn't stumbled onto the galactic stage as helpless newcomers. They had arrived fully aware of the dangers that awaited, prepared to respond with overwhelming force if threatened. High Hierarch Tella turned to Vostok. You will transmit our acceptance of these terms immediately. But Hierarch, Vostok protested, our military doctrine has just been proven catastrophically flawed. Tella cut him off. We believed ourselves to be teaching the humans a lesson in galactic reality. Instead, they have taught us one. 3 days later, aboard a neutral station in unclaimed space, Admiral Vasquez met with the Carrick's diplomatic delegation. The terms were non-negotiable: complete withdrawal from human space, substantial reparations for the destroyed colonies, and public acknowledgement of the unprovoked nature of the attack. You must understand, the Carrick's ambassador began, that our actions were based on established doctrine for dealing with expanding species. The Supreme Command believed a demonstration would establish proper hierarchical understanding. I understand perfectly, Vasquez replied coldly. You believed us soft, domesticated. You thought that because we prioritize creation over destruction, we had forgotten how to fight. The ambassador's inner eyelids flickered nervously, a miscalculation for which we have paid dearly. Not nearly as dearly as our colonists, Vasquez corrected. But this ends today. The Galactic Council has been provided with evidence of both your unprovoked attack and our measured response. They understand that we exercised restraint. This was the most frightening revelation for the Carrick's delegation, that the devastation visited upon their military hadn't been humanity unleashed, but humanity holding back. As the formal agreement was signed, establishing new boundaries and recognition of human territorial rights, a subtle shift occurred in the galactic power structure. Word spread quickly through diplomatic channels and trading posts. The humans were not to be trifled with. Behind their scientific outposts and cultural exchanges lay a species that had mastered the art of war so thoroughly they no longer needed to display it. On Earth, Dr. Ilara Chen stood before the memorial to New Haven Colony, her daughter Maya beside her. The holographic monument displayed the names and faces of those lost minus 11,984 souls whose deaths had revealed a hard truth about humanity's place in the galaxy. Will it happen again? Maya asked, her young face solemn beyond her years. Ilara glanced toward the sky, where Earth's defense fleet had returned to its hiding places, beneath oceans, behind Jupiter's moons, within hollowed-out asteroids. Visible now were only the scientific vessels, the trade ships, the cultural envoys that had always been humanity's preferred face to the universe. No, she answered with quiet certainty. They understand us now. Across the stars, a new equilibrium was forming. The Carrick's retreated to their borders, reassessing everything they thought they knew about interspecies relations. Other civilizations, watching from a distance, recalculated their approaches to the supposedly peaceful humans. And humanity continued its expansion, building colonies, establishing research outposts, extending trade networks, but now without the shadow of vulnerability. They had not sought the role of galactic military power, but they had embraced it when necessary. The message was clear to all who witnessed. Humanity preferred peace, chose creation over destruction, valued cooperation above dominance. But when threatened, when pushed beyond tolerance, they would respond with a precision and force that left no doubt about their capacity for war. It was not the introduction to the galactic community they had wanted, but perhaps it was the one they needed.